Dynaway Analytics was developed based on the classic fact that we in Dynaway are very skilled on the maintenance domain. We support the workflows, we support the daily work in the maintenance department, but all the data that are being gathered has not really been used in the past. It's valuable data that our customers can be much wiser on when they dig into it through Dynaway Analytics. Dynaway Analytics is a true data warehouse solution that gives the users a strong and flexible overview of the maintenance history, as well as the full overview of the future activities. The solution is today used by companies throughout the world. They benefit from the solution and they deliver great input to us, meaning that we continuously upgrade the solution to cover more and more areas of the maintenance discipline.
Dynaway Analytics really provides value through combining all of the asset management data with also financial and resource data. So that means that you can see exactly how much does it cost you to maintain an asset, not only in labor, but also in parts and item cost, and maybe third-party contractors. It really provides value in getting the most life out of your assets, having a clear picture of when it starts making sense to replace the asset compared to keeping to repair and maintain it. We see Dynaway Analytics really being used by companies that need to monitor preventive maintenance compliance. For instance, power plants, utility companies, it could be fleet management companies, shipping companies. Especially you can say when it's crucial that maintenance is performed on these assets to be compliant, and of course to prevent any major breakdowns or even fatal breakdowns that might occur. Obviously, Dynaway Asset Management or Asset Management from Microsoft is aiding the customer in this process, but by applying Dynaway Analytics on top of all that data, it really becomes obvious and evident where you need to prioritize your resources to make sure that you stay in compliance, and not least that you get the longest life out of your asset. We see it being used quite extensively by the maintenance managers that needs to allocate work orders and resources to various assets. We also see it being used by management in general, and whereas the maintenance managers are very much focused on the well-being of the asset, so to speak, higher level management might be interested in seeing the implication as far as cost goes in maintaining your assets. When is it time to replace an asset and not repair it? How much has any given asset cost me over the lifetime of the asset? Is that cost increasing? Is it being steady? How is it compared to similar assets? All those kind of questions can be answered using Dynaway Analytics and help give you a more educated solution to when to replace assets and when to apply or get more technicians hired to help maintain the assets.
Before using Dynaway Analytics, the customers are often using Excel, or they settle for using the limited reports in asset management. Excel is a splendid tool, but if the number of users are growing and the KPIs become more important, then a true data warehouse solution, Dynaway Analytics, is the route to follow. A typical argument for introducing analytics would be when you have an amount of data that makes it relevant to do analysis. This could be 3 to 6 months from go live on the Microsoft Asset Management solution. But in the practical world, it's very often relevant to implement analytics in parallel with the implementation of the maintenance solution from Microsoft. It helps you right away to focus on the defined KPIs. It helps delivering info to the customer if data quality for some reason is lacking. Finally, the adjustments you typically do on the analytics side makes much sense during the entire implementation.
For the end user, it is really recommended to have an application owner that becomes the go-to person internally. Ideally, that's someone with flair for using the Microsoft Office suite and someone that can speak the maintenance manager's language, so to speak. This may often be someone with the title of a business analyst or similar. During the implementation, it's most important that the end user really tests the solution, so the feedback and the initial tweak of the standard becomes as relevant to the specific use case as possible. In our experience, the maintenance managers often cannot allocate the time to do the testing and don't really have that skill set. But a business analyst might have that time. And when I'm talking about time, I would estimate it's probably somewhere in the 20 to 40 man hours. Then in order to maintain and use it going forward, it can be as little as almost no time at all, or as involved as the end user really desires it. And the reason for that is we deploy the solution with the source code and everything once the end user buys a license. So you have access to the complete data model. That means you can expand the solution, you can develop additional dashboards. Some users will do that, others will use the initial standard that we deploy out of the box. And in that case, it typically just runs and very little time is needed. And like I said, you can allocate or spend as much time as you desire because you get the complete data model and thereby the freedom to build additional dashboards as needed. In terms of implementing Dynaway Analytics, we currently implement it at a fixed price of 75 hours. And that spans over 6 to 8 calendar weeks in terms of getting it implemented. So during the time, there's some prerequisites that needs to be in place, such as, of course, getting the license, getting these data entities installed, and get the infrastructure set up for Dynaway Analytics. And typically, we'll then deploy the standard as is out of the box and have a first iteration with the stakeholders. So typically, the maintenance managers and the other stakeholders get their feedback and then tweak the solution so that it really becomes relevant in the specific use case. And we have 2 or 3 of these iterations back and forth to get this standard tweaked to your specific use case. And then there is, after that, quite, I would say, extensive testing period where we really need the involvement from the end user to get the best out of the solution. And again, that typically leads to some final tweaks of the solution before we put it into production and follow up with what we call hypercare. So really an intensive support and care period post the implementation. So in terms of the technology powering Dynaway Analytics, we utilize 100% Microsoft standard tools. So we utilize the Azure Cloud and SQL database as the data warehouse that powers the front end. And for the front end, it's Microsoft Power BI. So standard tools that most of the organizations already have in-house, or at least have a pretty good familiarity with.